Hey, looks like I'm live. Are we live? Let's see what we got here. Give me 1 minute to confirm that everything is happening the way it's supposed to. It looks like we are. Fabulous. Well, hey, welcome. Welcome today. I'm excited to get to share some really cool information with you that has taken years to figure out. And when it comes to diet, nutrition, looking and feeling great, improving brain health, decreasing brain fog, and avoiding Alzheimer's and dementia. And so this is a full-on educational conversation here. This isn't going to be just like a pitch or a webinar with something at the end that you get to buy. This is a coaching program, or rather a training, that I'm providing for a closed private coaching group. And rather than keeping it closed and private just specifically for that group, I wanted to be able to share this information live with everybody on Facebook, because I believe that this is a very powerful and necessary conversation that needs to be had right now. Because a lot of people right now are dealing with a lot of challenges, a lot of health issues. What do I mean by that? A lot of people are becoming overweight. We've got this new coined term called diabesity, which is we've got people going into type 2 diabetes. And we've got young kids who are going to school, getting labeled ADD or ADHD, and then getting prescribed things like Adderall or Ritalin. They're giving these kids amphetamines. And I am here to share with you my personal journey with that story. That literally is our story, mine and my family's story. And I want to proceed this with this. I am going to provide you some resources that will guide you along the process of cleaning up your diet, eliminating carbs from your diet or minimizing them so you can still have a little bit of fun, and improving your health drastically. So the way to get those resources is simply put a comment below this video, and I'll make certain that you are given that content and that information. In fact, some of the stuff I'm going to give you right now, which is if you go to troyoldcoaching.com/keto, that's KETO. So go to troyoldcoaching.com/keto. That's your first resource. There's some great information on that. But I want to share with you a little bit about my personal journey. I've always been a fitness guy. I've always been a gym rat. Back in high school, just like a lot of people, we want to look good. We want to feel good. And so I was in the gym a lot. And back in those days, there was a lot of really bad information that was circulating around. Any of us who lived through like the 80s and 90s, we were part of that conversation that fat is bad. Fat's bad for you. So you got to cut out your fat to lose weight, right? And decrease your fat, and you're going to lose weight. So here's the challenge. We have always eaten tremendous amounts of fat. Historically, our ancestors have eaten a lot of fats. That's why you see a lot of animals that go straight for the brain of an animal that they've killed, because it's pure fat. Now, here's a tip. What is our brain made of? It's made of fat. And so to decrease fat, to lose weight, is completely opposite of the truth. Okay, so back in the 80s and 90s, a big marketing campaign happened saying to decrease fat, good healthy fats. There was no such thing as good healthy fats back in those days. It was all fat is bad. So what happened is they replaced all of our products such as salad dressings, low fat, light. Now if you look at it, it's low fat, but what did they replace it with? They replaced it with sugar. They replaced it with high fructose corn syrup. Okay, so high fructose corn syrup, what is that stuff? Well, it didn't exist previous to like the 60s and the 50s, right? Here's why. Because it's manufactured from corn. It did not exist. So our bodies were not acclimated, it didn't adapt to it. It's a foreign substance that super spikes our blood sugar and insulin levels. And that's a problem. So you replace good healthy fats with sugar. Now you tell me, is that a smart thing to do? It's a bad thing to do. It's horrible. Okay, so here's what happened for me, and I'm going to say for me. I just saw my friend Craig Toth join. This guy is an incredible fitness guy, nutrition guy, and I'm sure that he can agree to some of this stuff. When long story short, life was challenging, and I walked out of a rehab center in 2003. I don't think I'm alone. I think now I'm a real American. You throw in a divorce, and now you're really an American. But it was just challenging life instances that caused me to go get a little bit of support. Now, here's the challenge. When I walked out of that rehab center, they had me set up with a whole lot of carbohydrates in my diet. They had me a game plan that I needed to follow and a schedule. But here's the challenge. A lot of the stuff that they gave me kept my body in an addictive state. It continued to feed the addiction, right? Carbohydrates, as you will find as we go through this conversation, are super addictive. And there's a reason for that, and I'll cover some of that. And so when I walked out of that recovery center in Gooding, Idaho in 2003, I had to put things back together. Now, here were some of the things that I was dealing with back in 2003 when I walked out of that place. I could not read a paragraph 5 times, 10 times, and actually remember what I had read. Now, you know some people possibly who are a little bit older, some grandparents, some elderly friends who are dealing with that type of issue, short-term memory loss. Well, mine came through alcohol and just full-on abuse of my brain. But one thing that I was very clear about is it was a very scary and frustrating place to be. I always took pride in the fact that I was a bit of a wordsmith, that I could read anything, and I loved to write. I had lost the ability to do those things through just abusing my brain and my body. And so I went on a very focused quest to identify how to heal my body, how to heal myself. Now, also what happened when I came out of that recovery center is because of my lifestyle, I had really beat up my adrenal glands. I had really beat up my ability to, my metabolism. So now I could look at food and I would automatically gain weight. And it was incredibly frustrating to walk out of that place wanting to get my life back in order, and I'm gaining 20 pounds, 30 pounds. And so that's where I started researching and searching for, there's my other part of the family. You hear that? I started searching for things that would actually improve my brain health and my body. And so since 2003, I have done a deep dive into that information. And so here's what happened for me after I finally got my nutrition dialed in, is I met a doctor named Dr. Robert Hockey here locally in Boise. Dr. Hockey is a regenerative health doctor. Okay, what does that mean? What that means is it's preventative, and we regenerate some of the damage that's been done to our body. Now, Dr. Hockey was a nephrologist previous to becoming an anti-aging doctor, a regenerative health doctor. Now, what is a nephrologist? A nephrologist is somebody who deals with people's kidneys, right? Now, who has kidney issues typically? Older folks, people later on in life, in the twilight. And what he described to me is that these individuals were undergoing pain management by him. Pain management. They had tipped over that line that where he could actually help them. He literally was just managing their pain until they finally tipped over and passed on. And that's not why he got into the medical industry, right? And so what he started doing is studying the body and the brain. We go into hormones in the endocrine system. Food has an absolute direct effect on our hormones, right? So if our hormones are out of whack, we all know, we all have our lovely ladies in our lives who have, their monthly cycle. And you notice that their attitude and their joy might wane during that time. That's because their hormones are becoming imbalanced, right? And so that happens to most people, whether you're male or female, due to the foods that we eat. And over time, we destroy our endocrine system. We start to hammer our hormones. And so they're fluctuating up and down. Now you tell me, is that a fun life to live when you're constantly dealing with your emotions up and down, up and down? So Dr. Hockey began to work with people on their endocrine system, hormone system. You know, we're talking about testosterone, we're talking about progesterone, we're talking about estrogen, We're talking about the things that make us who we are. And our food today has completely destroyed, for a lot of people, their ability to have moderated and balanced hormone systems. And so what we're going to talk about on this conversation is how to regain that health back. Now, I started working with Dr. Hockey about 5 years ago, and we started to moderate my hormone levels. Because what I came to after, well, again, I walked out of a recovery center in '03, and for years I started to put things back together. I started to work out again. I started to eat better, but not perfectly. And what I mean by that is there were still things included in my diet that radically held me back. And so working with Dr. Hockey for about 1.5 years, I looked and felt better than I ever had. But I did not have that coveted thing that all guys want, a six-pack. I didn't have a six-pack, and I was very frustrated by that. And so we talked about it, and he sat down and he says, well, Troy, I tell you what you got to do, son. He says, you got to get this book, Wheat Belly. You got to get the book, Wheat Belly. And when I got this book, I was completely blown away by what I read. We've all heard that there's gluten insensitivity or sensitivity. We've got people who are allergic to gluten. We've got people who, so it's gluten this, gluten that. So it makes sense, right, that if you cut out the gluten, that you're not going to have issues. That's not the case, because gluten-free products actually are replaced by things kind of like the fat scenario, with things that actually spike insulin blood sugar levels. So Dr. Hockey had me read this book, and I went through and I applied it. In fact, what I did is I went from that book to the Wheat Belly Cookbook. This book was given to me by my friend Andrea Landry, and we started to prepare meals that eliminated wheat. Why would you want to eliminate wheat? That's the big question my mom had. So I say, Mom, wheat is the devil. It's bad for you. My mom said, Troy, Jesus ate wheat, so it's got to be good for you. I said, yeah, but it's Jesus. Look at Judas. Stuff screwed him up, right? So all fun aside, the reality is that wheat, agriculture has always been shown to be a negative in the human body. You can go back through archaeology and you can see that bone density when people were hunters and gatherers, eating vegetables and eating animals, protein and fat, that the cranium size was large, the bone density was strong as nails, and obviously just a healthy individual. When any type of a society began to cultivate and grow things such as wheat and corn, the bone density decreased, started to look like cottage cheese, or rather Swiss cheese, and cranium size decreased, mandible size decreased, and obviously there was a direct negative effect for those individuals who started to cultivate such grains such as wheat and corn. Okay, so that's documented. That is just the way it is. But what happened in the 70s, when more and more people started getting on the planet, we need to feed more people. What's a cheap way to feed them? Wheat. Well, now here's the rub. In order to get more yield per acre for wheat, they had to take it into the lab and they genetically modified wheat. Okay? So when they genetically modified wheat, and this is an unintended consequence, by the way. This wasn't like a diabolical conspiracy theory where we're going to harm everybody. It was in a way for us to feed more people. So more yield per acre, a genetically modified wheat created a brand new protein that did not exist before. Just like when they started processing corn and created high fructose corn syrup. We've had tens of thousands of years to adapt to food naturally. And all of a sudden they introduce something that our body has no idea what it is or how to deal with it. And there's serious consequences with that. So when they created this genetically modified wheat, first of all, wheat spikes insulin levels, high, low. I mean, it spikes your insulin levels without a doubt. It's also a neurotoxin. That protein created a toxin for our brains that has obvious ramifications. We're seeing it with dementia. We're seeing it with Alzheimer's. We're seeing it in cases of ADD, ADHD. It's also been linked to situations with autism. So all this stuff is linked to wheat. And again, I really recommend you don't take my word for this, that you actually go get Wheat Belly, that you actually go get the book Grain Brain, okay? Grain Brain is a great book, and it's going to really guide you through the process of reducing carbohydrates. So here's what I did. I actually went on the Wheat Belly diet, and normally I would wake up, at that time I was about 39, and I have played hard. I mean, I have skied hard, I've run a lot of miles, I've put a lot of time in the gym, and my body was beat up. So my ankle, which I crushed back in junior high skiing, chronically every single day was always inflamed, was always sore, I was always gimping around a little bit. All my life, since junior high, I always had these big bags under my eyes, kind of puffy cheeks, and certainly didn't have a six-pack. And I always had a little bit of this brain fog. And I just thought it was normal. Because over time, that kind of stuff just stacks up. And you think it's normal. It's not normal. And so what happened is I stopped eating wheat. And so which radically reduced my carbohydrates. Along with wheat, now granted, I'm very obsessive, and when I get very focused, I can do this stuff. And so can you, by the way. I stopped eating wheat. I stopped eating sugar. I prepared my meals, and I prepared my meals so that I wouldn't get stuck with a low blood sugar levels and go through a drive-through or eat some crap that happened to be in my cupboard. And after 3 weeks, I was blown away. I was blown away because I'd been working out. I had already cleaned up my diet to a great degree, except for the fact I still had carbohydrates involved in my diet, wheat, and I still had sugar. After 3 weeks of being on the Wheat Belly diet, my puffy eyes were gone, my ankle, which was chronically in pain, felt normal, and I was actually starting to see a six-pack. And that was the only shift I had done in my life, right? I'd already got my workouts dialed in, I already had a pretty clean diet, but that one thing, wheat, which, again, carbohydrates, was that one thing that was holding me back. So after 3 weeks, I saw the results. I felt the results. I had more mental clarity. I had more energy. My aches and pains were gone. And genuinely, it was the biggest game changer and the biggest aha I'd ever experienced. And so what I did from there is I went even further, and I'm going to share some resources with you all that I think will be a huge benefit to you. You already saw Wheat Belly. You saw the Wheat Belly cookbook. Grain Brain by Dr. Perlmutter is remarkable. If you've got kids who are what you might think attention deficit, ADHD, if they're fidgeting in class, if they're not able to pay attention, you got to get this book. It'll help you and your kids tremendously. The other thing, another resource, and I think this is one of the most, I believe that this is probably the most important conversation that we can be having right now in society, especially in America, because of the epidemic of the prescriptions of Ritalin, Adderall, these ridiculous weight loss programs. You've got dementia, you've got Alzheimer's. All of this stuff is directly linked to carbohydrates, specifically with wheat. And so this is a book that I think will be a real benefit to you. The Big Fat Surprise. The Big Fat Surprise, why butter, meat, and cheese belong in a healthy diet. Have you ever thought about or seen pictures of our grandparents in the 40s and 50s? Have you seen photos, those black and whites of the cowboy days, in the late 1800s, or even in the 20s? Now, and I don't want to offend anybody here, but this is just obvious. Do you see many people who are massively, obese? You don't. The people who you see in those photos who are obese are who? The very affluent, who can eat whatever they want, and it's almost a sign of affluence. They take pride in that. But the majority of individuals are skinny. They're skinny. And there's a reason for that. The reason being is they worked, so they're moving their bodies, but they also hunkered over a big old plate of steak and eggs, right? They ate a lot of meat and fat on the meat. You don't cut that stuff off. Those folks were hunkering over some grub, man. and they're skinny, what gives? And so obviously there's something that's gone radically wrong with our food and the way we're marketed food today. And so it's really important that people do their own research with this. Again, I'm going to put a resource in here that will show you exactly what to do so that you can actually reverse some of the challenges that possibly you guys are having with your diet. But I also want to share with you the story that will kind of explain what I'm talking about. Imagine our ancestors, a couple hundred years ago. And they're like right here on the North American continent. What did we have? We had a bunch of indigenous people who were hunters and gatherers. They moved around a lot, and they experienced seasons, at least in most of the country. So, and I'm going to dive into like the food pyramid next. And so this will probably piss you off, or at least it should. Is those individuals did not get all these servings of fruit on a daily basis. Did they? No. Right? If you live in Idaho back then, where there's no orchards, when did you get fruit? Climbing in the mountains at a certain time of the year around a huckleberry bush, right? Or a currant bush or a blackberry bush. But it wasn't everywhere. It wasn't prevalent. And it certainly wasn't suggested that people could have this stuff on a daily basis. It just wasn't the way it was. What happened is hunters and gatherers and people in this part of the country, most of the country, they were hunting and gathering, eating, tubers, and they're eating leafy greens, and they're eating animals with lots of fat. And they're making damn sure that they're getting all the fat and the nutrients out of this food. And then occasionally, at a certain time of the year, by the way, they would come across a bush full of berries. What would they do? Pick a couple and be gone? Hell no. That's like Christmas to them. They'd sit around and they would eat every one of them. They'd eat every one of those berries, right, off the bushes. And they'd lay down and they'd let it do its work. What's the work? They're berries. They're loaded with sugar. They've got some great nutrients in them, not to be had every day. And it spiked their insulin levels. So the squirrels that they were munching on and the other nutrients that they were eating, actually, because of that rise in insulin, actually went to the appropriate places. Wasn't burned as fuel. It was stacked on their bellies, their butts, so that they could, what? Survive the winter. If you get the winter, not the winter, but for those who did that were winners. So if you guys relate to what I'm talking about, tap the screen, give some likes, and also, I'm going to check out some, we got some, hey, Catherine Hart, hey, Nick Kugelman, and thanks, Paul. I know you've got those books too. So that's the way it worked back then. They would run across a berry bush and they would eat a ton of these berries, and then they might not have berries or fruit again for weeks, many weeks. And then when the winter hit, they didn't have any fruit all winter long. So why is it that we're supposed to have so many fruits in our diet? Thanks for the likes and the hearts today. It makes no sense unless you're the person producing the fruit. Then it makes a lot of sense. Then you get in with the folks who create the food pyramid, and you say, hey, look, we need to move some oranges. We need to move some strawberries. And so then they incorporate that into the food pyramid. And you don't need to take my word for this. You just look at the consequences of our food pyramid, right? What's at the very bottom? Wheat. What's at the very top of the food pyramid? Fat, right? A little bit of fat and a whole bunch of wheat. That's the food pyramid. What really needs to happen, and we would reverse diabetes and cut dementia and Alzheimer's in half. We'd stop prescribing, Ritalin and Adderall to kids and adults if we just flipped it upside down. And we actually put the fats at the top, and we put just a little bit of carbs at the bottom, like our ancestors experienced, and actually had the opportunity to grow into, to adapt the gut biome and the probiotics, right? That's the way it is. So I want everyone to critically think for themselves when they hear this conversation and do the research. And I'm going to provide you links to different studies that you can go out and do this research on your own. Because that's literally what the food pyramid is about. You've got when you've got documentation today stating that wheat and carbohydrates are a direct result to diabetes, obesity, Alzheimer's, dementia, ADD, all these autism studies are there, but marketing holds it in place. Marketing holds it in place that we've got to have this food pyramid scenario in our lives. That food pyramid scenario has created radical obesity and a lot of challenges within our families and within our health. And so we get to the opportunity to reverse that. Okay, so that makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, that hunters and gatherers are not running around eating vegetables or fruits all the time. That is completely new today. The one thing that I want to share with you guys, and where are we at? We've got about a half-hour mark. Then I'll go through and I'll answer some questions for you guys, if you got them. Preach, killing it. Thanks, Justin. Let's see if you guys have any questions about this. Is what can you guys, what can you do to actually start reversing this stuff immediately? I think the first thing you can do is start to, and this might take some time for people, because it's been so drilled in our heads, you know, especially my generation, the 80s and the 90s, where fat is bad. Fat is not bad. I mean, I literally had a cup full of fat this morning with my coffee. It's, I take medium chain triglycerides or coconut oil, which is a medium chain triglyceride. Is coconut oil a fat? Yeah, it's a fat, but it's a medium chain triglyceride. So it doesn't like get on your body as fat. It burns as fuel. The brain loves it. You know, the heart loves it. If you're putting more fat into your body, what do you think your body says about the fat that's on it? It says, whoa, we're getting plenty of fats here. Getting plenty of fat from this grass-fed beef. We're getting plenty of fats from grass-fed butter. We're getting plenty of fats from coconut oil. When you put in good fats without spiking your insulin levels with wheat, then your body says, hey, we're good. We got plenty of fat coming in on a daily basis, baby. Good, healthy fats on a daily basis. We need to just start dropping some of this stuff off the belly and the butt. We need to start getting rid of some of this fat that we're storing on our body that we gained over years of fat reduction, and we need to just let this go. That's what happens when you start to increase your fat intake with good, healthy fats, good saturated fats. Oh my God. It requires saturated fats for your hormone system to work well. You know, it takes cholesterol for men to produce testosterone. But yeah, what else have we heard about cholesterol? Like it's the devil. It's not the devil, man. Inflammation is the devil. Spiking insulin levels is the devil. So once you start to understand how our bodies work and start to implement these things into your life, you'll notice fat loss almost immediately. Like literally, I've got clients right now that have lost 20 pounds of fat inside of 30 days. In fact, it was less than that. But it's because they started increasing their fat intake. So I'm going to provide a link that will show you one of the best ways for you to actually begin to implement this into your life. It's got a recipe book with meals that you can prepare for yourself and your family so that can become an actual experience. Listen to some great music, watch a great movie, prepare a great meal that you can put in your refrigerator and your freezer, and you can hand to your family as they go out the door. That's so much better to have a healthy, like vegetable-rich, protein and fat-rich meal that you can hand to your children and to your loved ones as they go out the door, so that they don't go to the vending machine and get those products that are created with wheat, genetically modified, with preservatives in them, and things that make them colorful because all the nutrients have been like literally processed out of them. So think about that. You give them a prepared meal, prepared the right way with grass-fed beef possibly, good organic vegetables, colorful, waterborne foods, and you hand them that and let them eat that food when they go out the door. Or they go to a vending machine and they eat dry, old processed chips with chemicals and coloring in them, all of which have a major effect on our endocrine system and on our brains. And they're devoid of any nutritional value. So you tell me this is where I had major challenges, man, in my relationship with this particular instance. Is I think it's a form of abuse for us to not take responsibility for our meals, for ourselves, and for our family. And when you've got little kids who are getting a bowl of Cocoa Puffs with milk, and that's a whole other conversation, and a big glass of orange juice chock full of sugar with zero nutritional value, you send them out the door, and their insulin levels and their sugar spike so high that they're just like little crack addicts at school. And then the counselors say, I think the kid's ADD, I think he needs to get on some Ritalin. Where in the hell does that make sense at all? It makes zero sense. That same kid, if you were to sit him down and give him good whole eggs, scramble them whole eggs, farm-raised eggs, not mass-produced eggs. Those things have more decent, like bad fats in them. But you give them some bacon and eggs, send them out the door, and watch what happens. But that's one of the things that really shifted things for me, is to realize that so many kids are going out the door in the morning loaded with sugar. So they're fidgeting and they're crazy in the morning, and then they spike until they go to the vending machine, and they spike again. Then they go to lunch, which is what? Burritos wrapped in wheat that are deep fried and in the bad fats. And they repeat the process. Norm has been following Grain Brain and Wheat Belly diet and has been able to get off Humira. That's huge for his rheumatoid arthritis for 6 months now. Thanks, Catherine. That is huge. See, that's one of the things in this conversation. We could talk all day, but I won't. I'm going to wrap it up here in just a little bit. But that's exactly what I'm talking about. Look at Catherine Hart's comment here. He was able to get off Humira, rheumatoid arthritis. That's the beginning of a cascading effect of pharmacological hell. Exactly what my Dr. Robert Hockey was talking about. That's how it starts. Oh, I got achy joints. Well, you must have rheumatoid arthritis. Well, where did it come from? Why don't they go to the cause of it? No, we'll just treat it. We'll treat it with a pharmaceutical. Why? Why is it that have pharmaceuticals replaced good, nutritious food? Because it's profitable. Wellness is not profitable. Sickness is profitable. And I guarantee you that has an unintended consequence as well, which is most pharmaceuticals have a cascading effect, a domino effect. So a pharmaceutical for rheumatoid arthritis, but guess what? It's hurting the liver. Oh, we got something for the liver. We give you something for the liver. Or you've got something for your blood pressure. And so it's always a pharmaceutical instead of food. And pretty soon you've got this toxic environment in the body. People on 3, 4, 5, 10 pharmaceuticals. I'm telling you what a miserable way to live. When all it takes is just a simple step into the right direction of truth and understanding about the way things work. Don't listen to the advertisers. Don't follow. If you're going to follow the food pyramid, turn it upside down and your life will be amazing. Begin going to the grocery store and making an experience out of it. A lot of people can't stand. Switch to intermittent fasting, lost 25 pounds, eating better with good fats. Right on, Drew. Thanks for adding that, brother. Catherine said his mood is 100% better since being off that. I love that. So cool. So that's what we're talking about. This information getting out there, it not only improves our health, it improves our lives. Because, like, my personal experience was this. When the economy tanked in 2009, my phone went, shut off. We went from, my voicemail being full on a daily basis because people needed construction, and that was what I did, construction and concrete and masonry back in those days. Phone rang off the hook, and then one day, it just stopped ringing. It wasn't like a slow decline. The phone stopped ringing. Just one day, it went dead. I thought somebody hit the T-Mobile towers. Nope, that's when those guys, the banks, it caught up with them, and it also had an effect on us. So at that point, prior to 2009, I was doing what most Americans are supposed to do, right? A man's supposed to go be the breadwinner and go earn money at the cost of everything. So I was the guy who at baseball games, when I made it to my son's baseball game, while he's at bat, like this, looking over his shoulder to see if his dad's watching him. I'm on the phone, right? Didn't make it to a lot of dinners because I was being a good, responsible man, you know, supporting my family. I missed too much. I mean, I missed too much. I can't change that. But I did make a big difference. Once the phone stopped ringing, I thought, well, hell, this is my opportunity. And so I started looking at ways that I can improve my life, my family's life, and spend more time together. And that one way that I think it's been made the biggest difference in my life and benefited me and my family more than anything was when I decided to start taking over the grocery shopping. And I started going with this information, and I started picking out products. By the way, when you go to the grocery store, you know, like here's the box, the grocery store box. Everything in the middle of a grocery store is crap for the most part. Not all of it, but it's crap. All the good stuff is around the outside edges, right? Go in, turn right, go to the vegetables, pick up your vegetables, go get some of, like eggs, fat, butter, meat. All that stuff's on the outside, not on the inside. So that's what I did. And here's what I want to suggest to you. Rather than going to the grocery store and thinking it's such a pain in the butt, think about the gift and the blessing that you're providing for yourself and for your family. And if you've got little tiny kids, man, have mama or have daddy watch them little kids while you go to the grocery store, because it's chaos and you'll hate going to the grocery store if you take little kids. Anybody who's taking little kids to the grocery store knows what I'm talking about. Go knowing with everything you pick up that that's going to go into your family's body. And that's going to directly affect their brain and their body. That's going to directly affect everything in that person's life. You put in good, healthy fats and good nutrition into your kids, they're going to calm down. Your quality of life is going to increase in your household. They're going to go to bed and sleep better. They're going to wake up more bushy-tailed and bright-eyed. That all depends on what you're putting into that grocery cart. And so what I do is when I grocery shop, I take that time to really think about those people I love that I'm going to bring this food home to. And so it gives me time to really have gratitude, to think about how much I love them, to put that food into my cart with a plan. I know exactly what I'm going to purchase because I'm going to come home and prepare that meal. And so when I started this in '09, we come home and our living room and our kitchen was all kind of connected. And we put on funny movies. And Adam Sandler's one of our favorites. So I'll never forget watching Mr. Deeds. Watching Mr. Deeds with, you know, Carson's doing homework or Madison's doing homework. We're all together. Jacqueline's like chopping onions at the counter. We're together as a family watching this hilarious movie, and we're together. And I prepare these meals, and then we made a commitment to have dinners together. And sometimes we'd be spread out, you know, plates at the couch. But we always made a concerted effort to have dinner at the dinner table with no phones and hang out. And that's been hugely beneficial. And so I really want to encourage you to make grocery shopping, going to the grocery, a really amazing experience for you and something that is like at the tip top of your personal responsibility as a parent and frankly as an individual. Because what we put into our bodies will affect everything. And so that was one of the key things I did. I saw, like Drew just said that, Paul Sabash, you need to include your chili recipe. Oh, you know it, brother. I will. In fact, in the comments when this is over, I will put a link to the recipe book that I collected and some of my favorite recipes, of which, like Paul just suggested, paleo chili. I found a really great paleo chili recipe, and then I've modified it, and it's anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, doesn't spike your insulin levels. It's loaded with grass-fed beef, grass-fed for a reason, because guess what? Cows that eat wheat is modified, produces a different fat, which affects our bodies when we eat it. And so this is an amazing meal that I can put some in the freezer, some in the fridge, and for a week, we can hand that out the door. along with a giant salad that we've got in our refrigerator for a little bit of variety. And you can change that stuff up based on what high-fat salad dressings you put on it, based on like almonds and cashews over your chili with some sour cream. You can really have a diversified plate if you just know what to do. And so here's something going with what Drew said about intermittent fasting. Fasting is another aspect of doing a fast reset for your body, for our bodies. And that can look like, 3 to 5 day at a stretch fast. I don't like those. I don't like them at all. Or it can be intermittent fasting, like Drew's talking about, where you put about an 18-hour stretch between eating. And here's why. Again, we have been trained and programmed through advertising and through convenience that we can have food whenever we want. And so we stuff in our face constantly, whether we're hungry or not. Why do we do that? Because it's addictive. And that's a whole other conversation. But it's radically addictive, this food, non-food product that we have today. Before I go into intermittent fasting, I want to share this story with you. A really good friend of mine who is a pharmacist, and I'm not going to share his name, but he is a really dear friend of mine and very, very successful in that space. They should really have pharmacists prescribe and doctors stay the hell out of the equation. Doctors should say, here's the symptoms, hand it to a pharmacist, and the pharmacist actually prescribes if they're going to prescribe something. Because they have so much is broken in our medical system. So this is an individual who had, as a pharmacist, had access to a lot of opiates. What's another major epidemic? Oxycontin, painkillers, Norco. So this friend of mine, he, I want to talk, man, Recovery Scenario 3. He started taking Oxycontin and Norco and became an opiate addict. Basically, bottom line, daily chronic opiate addict. Now he stopped. He's made his redemption and all that good stuff. He's a wonderful guy, clean and sober for a lot of years. Still a pharmacist. When we spoke about Wheat Belly, and I told him my experience, he tried it. He didn't just try it, he did it. So he called me 2 weeks after eliminating wheat. And I could hear the desperation in his voice. He's like, dude, when's this going to get better? Because again, coming off of wheat affects everybody differently. But he's like, I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, dude, this feels worse than coming off of freaking opiates. Coming off of wheat is worse than coming off of opiates? Try it. Every single person that actually tries this on and eliminates wheat for 2 to 3 weeks, generally about 3 weeks, that breaks the addiction. You don't want to constantly go to the cupboard. And they start to feel good, and then they, I'm going to go have a cookie, or I'm going to go have some bread. And as soon as they do, it, bam, instantly kicks in the addiction. Or they can have a piece of pizza, worse yet. And they crush that piece of pizza. 100% of the people who do that, after having 2 to 3 weeks off of wheat, say the same thing. Felt horrible. Felt like I got hit by a truck. Couldn't think straight. Want to take a nap. Felt like shit. Right. That is the power of wheat and its addictive properties. Once you go 3 weeks off of it, you're good to go. But here's the key with that. Yeah, listen, Bobby. Here's the key with that. People who go off of wheat for 3 weeks and start to feel good and have the mental clarity, and then go back and eat wheat, then they realize, and they start feeling horrible, can't think straight, you got the brain fog, the sleepies. That's how people feel all the time until they try this. It's like the normal way of being, and it's such a downgraded way of living. And so I just highly encourage everybody to grab Wheat Belly. I'll send you a resource where you can watch an interview with the doctor who actually wrote the book. He's on Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz can't even imagine. He's like, I thought this was ridiculous. Until they took 5 women from the studio audience on the Dr. Oz show. One day they had them all eat wholesome wheat. All of them ate wheat, some slices of bread, and they checked their blood insulin levels. And then the next day, they had those same 5 women eat Snicker bars. Same 5 women eat Snicker bars. So one day they eat wheat and they check their blood sugar levels. The next day they eat Snicker bars and they checked their blood sugar levels. And guess what? All 5 women's blood sugar levels were spiked higher from the wheat than a Snicker bar. All 5. 2 of them, twice as high. Go figure. Wholesome whole wheat. Marketing ploy. Okay, so here's, let's shift into intermittent fasting, the way to start this really quickly for yourselves. And again, I'll put in the comments here the links to where you can follow. You can go online, you can follow it. There's nothing to buy there. You just go in there and you can actually see what I do. And that is, I eat between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. typically, unless I'm like lifting to gain muscle mass, you know, which is about twice a year. I'll go through a phase where I want to get muscular and strong. But traditionally, on a daily basis, my normal way of being is I intermittent fast. So I will wake up in the morning and I'll have, well, that's a full cup of coffee. Thank you, Kimberly. I'll have a good cup of coffee and I mix grass-fed butter, 4 tablespoons, and 4 tablespoons of either coconut oil or medium chain triglycerides, MCT, which comes from coconut oil, which has 16 more times the energy potential. And none of that is going to stay on my body as fat. Remember the scenario, right? You put enough good fats in your body starts saying, hey, we're getting good fats every single day. I think it's going to keep coming. Let's start getting rid of this fat off of our bellies and our butts. That's a cool consequence of drinking more fats. So in the morning I'll have what they call it a bulletproof coffee loaded with fats. I might even have 2. And then I don't eat until 1 o'clock. And then at 1 o'clock, I put in all my calories between 1 and 7. And I don't restrict calories between 1 and 7 p.m. I eat all I want. What I don't do is I don't eat wheat, and I don't eat sugar. I do eat some foods like onions and sometimes like carrots that convert to sugar, and that's enough. But I make sure that I'm eliminating the carbs, the wheat. And what happens now is, I want to take you back to our hunter-gatherer ancestors. You know, and this is, you know, not even just hunter-gatherers. Let's just go back, you know, 100 years when people, you know, they just didn't eat as much. But let's go back to the hunter-gatherers. You know, they're roaming around. They shoot an animal. They all sit down. They prepare the animal. They eat as much as they can. They try to store as much as they can through salt and all that, the preservation there. And then they move on. And sometimes they wouldn't eat for a day. Well, sometimes they certainly wouldn't eat 3 times a day, 4 times a day like we do today, all day like most people do today. They had long gaps in between eating. That's the way our bodies are designed. Because we didn't have McDonald's, you know, we didn't have all the fast food joints to drive through. Well, we had grocery stores, you know, or back then they had a gun and they shoot an animal. So they have these long periods between food. So here's something to know about our digestive tract, our digestive system. It takes a massive amount of energy to digest food. It takes even more energy on top of that to process out all the chemicals, right? To work through, constantly working through, to eliminate the toxins that are involved in our food, right? And so tons of energy being burned up just on the digestive tract. So what happens when you do an intermittent fast, like Drew talks about, like I do on most days, is you give your digestive tract a long period of time to rest. Yes, it's done its job, it's digested food, it's pulled out the nutrients, and now it kicks back, kicks its feet up, got all this extra energy. Your body now has all this extra energy because it's not constantly digesting food. What can it do? It can begin finding and identifying what needs to be healed in the body. It can start to regenerate parts of the body. It can start regenerating the brain. You know, it actually can start to heal the body instead of constantly trying to just keep it afloat, man, like keep it going. So that's what intermittent fasting does. It also allows the gut to just reset. When you're constantly filling it with chemicals and non-food products and just keeping it burning, it messes with the gut biome. We'll have another conversation about the direct link between the gut biome and how probiotics and prebiotics are actually getting people off of antidepressants. In fact, I've got clients personally who, working with their gut biome, came off of an acid reflux pharmaceutical, they came off of an antidepressant, and they came off of an anti-inflammatory pharmaceutical, just by working with their gut biome and making sure that that was healthy and normal. So does that make sense, you guys? If so, like, hit like or comment that back in the day, our ancestors didn't go through drive-thrus 2 to 3 times a day. That is so bad for us, man, but we've been trained that that's a good thing. Thanks for the likes. They went long periods of time between meals, and they had a lot of sometimes exercise and work in between that. So they had their digestive tract actually got to rest. Remember that the digestive tract, the brain, burns so much energy. Our brains burn a lot of energy as well as our digestive tract. So when we can feed our brain good healthy fats, and we can give our digestive tract a break, we're going to reduce stress. We're going to actually give the body an opportunity to heal that which needs healed, instead of being in a chronic survival state and a slow decline and one more pharmaceutical, and pretty soon you're sitting in the corner spaced out and you don't remember your kids' names. I don't mean to be like morbid, but let's face it, that's happening. It's happening at an epidemic rate. So let's see, do we have, I'm about ready to wrap it up here, you guys. Hey, thanks, Cindy. Randall Grizzle, right on, brother. He's one of my brothers, man, and he's just rocked his physique and his body. I appreciate you commenting on this. Anybody have any switch to intermittent? Okay, that's true. Need to include your chili recipe. All right, some of the comments are showing up here. So here we go. While we're still on, I'm going to put in the, let's see, the links to some resources for you. The first one is troyoldscoaching.com/keto. So you can check that one out. And make sure you get that. And the next one is, I believe, the Daily Pound. Let's find out. Yeah, this one. Boom. All right. So in the comments now are the resources for you. So what I've done is I've given you some good information on low carb. They call that ketosis. You're living in a more ketogenic state in our body. And I'll wrap with this. Is our bodies, our ancestors worked and lived more in a ketogenic state, meaning that they burn more fat for fuel than just glycogen and glucose for fuel. And if you can imagine why, this is something really to understand, that most top athletes today, in fact, where's the book? Another great book for you, The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Performance. Great book. That's why triathletes, long endurance runners, people who are like these uber long, prolonged exercise athletes are going into ketosis and dropping their carbs, because here's why. Most people, probably know some folks who do half marathons or marathons, and they run and they take those goos and those gels that are pure sugar so they can get through the race. Well, that's because our bodies most people's bodies have become accustomed to and trained by marketing, media, and fast food to eat carbohydrates for fuel. As an example, like when I was in high school, our coach was like, eat a big carbohydrate dinner before we play football tonight. That was the extent of the science back then. Is eat a bunch of carbs before football. And it's horrible, frankly. So what happens is our liver holds the most glucose, glycogen in it, which is our fuel. And it is a fraction of the energy compared to the fat stores on our body. Most people aren't even close to fat adapted. What does that mean? Our bodies who are fat adapted burn its own fat for fuel. That's a good thing, right? The majority of people are burning sugars for fuel. There's only a finite amount of sugars and glycogen, glucose in the body that it can actually burn for fuel. and then you're going to bonk. So if you're a marathoner and you run out of your own body's glucose, glycogen, what happens? You reach for a jelly, you suck it down, you get a spike in insulin, you go another mile. Now, if you're fat adapted, what happens is your body actually is like a hybrid car. Burns some glycogen, goes to the fat, glycogen. Oh, run out of glycogen, let's go more to the fat, and it starts burning its own fat for fuel. That's why you see ultra marathoners, you see Ironman triathletes. These ultra athletes are in a ketogenic state. And if you notice, they look freaking awesome. You know, their bodies look good. And there's so many benefits to that. You're going to heal the brain. Ketosis, it's what the whole Atkins diet was about. Y'all remember the Atkins diet? That whole process of the Atkins diet and bacon breath and all that stuff was to get your body in a state of ketosis. The brain loves ketones. Ketones are the most optimal fuel for the heart, the brain, and the heart. It's got a lot of medical benefits to having ketones in the body. And you can simply do it by cutting out the carbs. And I'll show you how to do that. So, if there's no more major questions, Troy Old or Troy Olds? Troy Olds, come on, Cindy. You know my last name. TroyOldsCoaching.com. We're going to wrap this up, but I'm going to put the resources to these books. I'm going to show you a couple of things I've got that you guys can pick up. Keto Clarity. Keto Clarity is a great one. Very basic stuff. Very good information as to what that really covers the ground that we've had in this conversation today. This is another one by Jeff Volek. That's not for the uber athlete, low carbohydrate living. That's going to give you some great information. And again, anybody who's got children, anybody who's got prescriptions for inflammation, for high blood pressure, for ADD, any of that stuff, this is the conversation for you. And then Chris Kresser. This is an incredible book full of whys. It's paleo, but it's also a very good, paleo can get you into ketosis if you do it right and cut out the carbs. So it's another great book. So this is some of the stuff that I've been reading over the years and really implementing into my life. If you go to, I'm showing off now, go to TroyOldsCoaching.com/keto, and you can see that over the age of 40, I had a pretty rock star six-pack. It's not quite that rock star today, but I'm getting back into it. So any of you who have, yeah, Cindy, absolutely. If you came in late, if you go back and watch the replay of this, we're not talking just gluten. We're talking about eliminating wheat altogether, getting rid of wheat, and lowering carbs. Gluten, it can almost be a trick. You know, there's so much money in gluten-free stuff today that it's actually the gluten-free, like pizza crust. I actually had them bring me the box so I could look at the ingredients. Tapioca flour, stuff that spikes your insulin, so crazy. So there's a lot of, we're talking specifically about spiking insulin levels and the brain fog that comes along with this stuff. So with that said, you guys, if you have, awesome to see you, Cindy. You all have any questions, you can go back to this video and you can ask questions and comments, or you can just reach out to me personally. My contact info is on the website, and we can keep your conversation going. So hopefully this was really helpful to you guys. Next week we're going to continue this conversation. We're also going to go into hormone balancing. Now that we've got some of the food taken care of, I do want to show you how to prepare some really great meals, give you more tips and tricks. But next week we're going to go into stress reduction and hormone balancing because they're directly linked. But once you have a foundation of good nutrition, so your body and your brain can actually think straight, then we can start going into stress reduction, which, by the way, when you start to eat this way, it's going to take so much stress off of your body. You're going to feel so much better. You're going to sleep so much better. It's just so many benefits. Then we'll get into another major epidemic as a consequence of the non-food products and the way we've been marketed to in our lifestyle, which is our hormones. You know, there's a lot of guys, I'll frame it up and then we'll close. When I went to a doctor before I met my hormone doctor, Dr. Hockey, I went in and I said, hey doc, I'm tired, I gotta drink 2 rock stars at 3 o'clock just to make it through the day. I'm working out, but my joints are sore and I can't build muscle and I'm still fat, what's up? And I also mentioned to him, hey, I heard that my testosterone might be low. Mind you, I was 37 at the time. And he says, testosterone, low testosterone. He says, can you still get an erection? Like, that's the key indicator. It's like, well, yeah, man, I can get an erection, but I'm too depressed to get off the couch to use it. That's general practitioner's idea of hormones. It was when I went to my hormone doctor, Dr. Hockey, that we did a blood test, and I realized that my testosterone levels were like under 300. Optimal are between 800 and 1100 nanograms per deciliter in the blood, and mine were below 300. No wonder I was depressed, couldn't think straight, couldn't get off the couch, and although I could get an erection, I didn't want to use it, man. I'd rather do anything than that. So if that's you, if that's you personally or a spouse, I tell you what, we're going to do a deep dive into the hormones, hormone balancing, hormone supplementation. You can do this naturally through food and nutrition, and there's also some other pharmacology that you can use. But I'm always that guy who, if you can do it without pharmaceuticals, do that. So I hope all this was really helpful for you guys. You like that, Catherine, did you? It's a true story. Appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in, and let's wrap it up.